Hello and welcome into the live stream. I need to put a little bit of this stuff away here before we get started. Let's see, I'll find a spot. Over there looks good. I really didn't want to do this live without a camera person, but everybody's got excuses and I can't wait on other people. So I'm going to do the best I can with a static position camera. And this is a really cool build, so I wish I had a cameraman, but it is what it is. I got to get it done. This is a Corsair 300R mid-tower computer case. Very similar to the 200R, just a little bit taller. And instead of these holes being one above the other, they're side by side, almost otherwise identical. And we're putting it all together with a 750 watt modular power supply, or is a semi-modular, and then we've got the USB card reader and Wi-Fi adapter with a 4 terabyte Seagate BarraCuda hard drive and Asus DVD reader writer. And what's the good stuff? Well, the good stuff is a Sabertooth x99 Asus motherboard, which means, of course, we're going to be using the more expensive, the Core i7-6900K, very expensive CPU. This costs more than some of your builds. And we're combining that with 32 gigs of RAM. This is Ballistix from, who makes this? I think it's G-Skill, isn't it? Micron Ballistix RAM. And we've got Windows 10, and this is the Pro version. And it wouldn't be complete without a EVGA 8 gig GTX GeForce 1080, and that's going to be our build today. I will have a parts list, the full parts list and all the prices, the total price rather, is in the video notes, just like all my other videos. It's amazing how many people ask that question in the comments, because apparently they're not aware. All I have to do is click on the video notes. What are you going to do? So it will be there. For those of you who don't know, there are video notes in every single video on YouTube, and they generally address the most common questions. And rather than posting a question like that, check the video notes first. You'll get your answer a lot faster. And with that, I think I want to go ahead and get started. I'll say hello to everybody in the chat there. I need to grab my mouse because I can't see what's going on over here. And I'm not sure how much light I've got. I know I've only got an hour of memory card left on the camera, so I'll be taking an intermission probably, I would guess within an hour, where I've got to change the memory card. So plan for that accordingly. And everybody can hear me okay, I'm assuming. I hope everybody can hear me. Oh, I failed to mention what we're doing for apart from this hard drive. This is a storage drive. Right down here, we've got a Samsung 960 EVO M.2 1 terabyte gum drive. Right, that's what I call it. So that's going to be the boot drive with lots of room on it, plus the 4 terabyte. I'm sorry I left. I meant to get back to that. It really should be over here with these parts so that you can see the title of everything. Can you even see that? Yeah, the titles are out. And with that, I think I want to get started. Hello, Carey. Be careful with Western Digital green HDDs. I'm careful with all HDDs. All right, so instructions. They can go over there. And I'm going to start by prepping the case. We all know this routine by now. I've mentioned before, I will mention again, that there are numerous ways to build your computer. In other words, the order in which you put the parts in doesn't have to be the way I show it. There's a method to my madness, and it makes sense to me. And if you've never built a computer before, if you follow what I'm doing, you should expect the same results I get. However, if you're a more moderate to advanced user, familiar with computer hardware, then of course you can build in whatever order you're most comfortable with. First thing I like to do is get the optical drive installed because it's so easy. Just get it out of the way. And usually these push out. Oh, this has a little lever. We'll take that out And give me the optical drive down here. And let's go ahead and just pop that right on in there. There it is, that's in. We'll take the hardware out. This is all the mounting screws and everything you need that's specific to the case for mounting all of these parts into this case. All brand new cases, if you're building your own computer, will come with the hardware that accommodates the specific case that you purchased. They're not all the same unless you buy the exact same case that I have here. And it's always nice when you go with the name brand manufacturers of cases. They're sturdy, well built, there's no sharp edges to cut yourself, and I like that they give you some wire ties for free. I mean, nowhere near enough. 4 is a good start, 40 would be better, but that's okay. That can go there, get an extra standoff, and then we've got all the screws. I won't get into too much detail because this is live. I'm going to try and crank through it rather quickly. So if you're looking for much more detailed information dealing with cabling, close-ups, screw types, how to tell them apart, there's plenty of other videos I've got of computer builds going back years that's all the same, hasn't changed. So if you go back and watch the oldest computer video build, yeah, I think I said that right. The oldest one's probably from 2012. It's exactly the same process today in 2017. The screws that you select are the same, and the difference is we're using a lot more solid state drives and things like M.2 that didn't exist back then. And we'll see if I can't focus a little more on the build and a little less on the conversation so I can get a little bit more done than I normally do. I often get sidetracked with explaining the reasons why I'm doing things or addressing comments in the chat, and then before you know it, I've stopped working to finish my thought. So at least now if I'm talking, I'll do it while I'm building. At least I'm going to try to. So the next thing I'm going to put in is the power supply. That can go over there. Oh, this is taped closed. There we go. Instruction manual, warranty, more zip ties, that's good. Power cable's good. Silica gel. Do not eat. Throw away. Desiccant. What? That was pathetic. Get. Packing. Modular cables. Empty box. Useless velvet bag. I don't know who's that for. Another bag in the bag that was in the box. That was shipped in another box. There's no label to peel off down here. You see there's a grate. Nothing to peel off, so please don't tell me I didn't peel it off because there's nothing to peel off. People are very, very quick to try and find errors in my videos, and sometimes they find them, but it's really annoying when people correct something that doesn't need to be corrected, that wasn't wrong. It's one thing when one person does it. It's another thing when 1,000 people do it. So that's hopefully going to nip that in the bud before it happens. And this came with our power supply. We've got more nylon zip ties, another Corsair Go Faster sticker right there. And the reason I'm getting into this is for the screws. Now, didn't I just say screws came with the case? Yes, they do. And you can use the screws that came with the case. If your power supply comes with screws, I think that's the preferred screws to use. And there's a little sticker that I better take off now. So let me get that out of there and take this sticker off. Sticker just says basically that the fan doesn't run unless it's needed, so don't call tech support because your fan's not running. And let's go ahead and get this power supply secured into position. Let's see what we got going on here. There we go. Boy, these screws are having a tough time today. I'm going to crank this up a little bit. There we go. Much better. Better. All right, now I'm going to bring that back down. I usually put the clutch on 3 so this doesn't over tighten the screws. And as I've mentioned before, if you're a first-time builder or you're new to your electronic screwdriver, probably best to not build with an electronic screwdriver. It's good to take things apart with it, but it's very easy to cross-thread a screw and not realize it, and then you might be able to not secure a screw, and you would have to retap it and get new screws from a hardware store. It's a big pain in the butt. So let's see, we can put our hard drive in now. It can go into any of these 4 bays. This one, I guess I must have been distracted when I was putting that in. Yeah, it can go into any of these 4. Yeah, that one's not in straight either, so it wasn't just me. And I'm going to put it in the top bay for right now. And if I need to move it around later, the reason I would move it is for making the cabling look better. But I don't know what the cabling is going to look like yet, so we're going to start somewhere. You'll see that's completely toolless. You just pop the little pegs into the little holes on the sides of the drive. Come on. Maybe I need to start with this side. There we go. Sometimes on these hard drive caddies or these hard drive trays, one side bends easier than the other. And other times they're the same. I'm having it so my connectors are going to be facing the back of the computer so I can hide the cabling so that when you look at it from the front, you know, it's going to look nice and clean in there. And then all of our mess of cables will be tied up back here when we're done. That's the process. Now that actually pretty much takes care of the prep of the case. Now we can start prepping the motherboard. I mean, that was pretty quick, right? Didn't take much time at all. I need to keep my work area clean. I recommend that you do the same. And I want to readdress, you know, while I'm putting this stuff away, I made a video about whether or not you should wear gloves when you're building a computer and that you should not wear gloves. And knowing that people aren't going to listen, they're going to do it anyway. If you have to wear gloves, but wear the nitrile gloves. And they do sell anti-static nitrile gloves. You can find them on Amazon if you just do a search on Amazon for ESD gloves. And some people have written in with these bizarre excuses on why they wear gloves. One of them was they didn't want to leave fingerprints on things. I don't know what you would be leaving fingerprints on. There's no way to leave a fingerprint on a circuit board. And if you hold the parts the way I show you in the videos, you wouldn't be leaving fingerprints anyway. However, regardless if you leave fingerprints or not, you're still going to have to clean the computer from time to time. So what difference does it make if you clean it right after you build it, or you clean it every 6 weeks after you build it, or every 6 months after you build it? You still got to clean it. Other people have said they have very sweaty hands. Well, go wash your hands, dry them off real good, and keep a dry towel close by. Water itself, the liquid, it doesn't hurt the parts unless the parts are powered on. So it's not like you're drenching the parts or submerging the parts. So if you have really sweaty hands, keep a towel close by, and you can, if your hands are really, really wet, dry them off and touch the case and get back to work. And when they start to sweat again, it's no different when your forehead sweats. You know, you wipe off the sweat and you keep going. It's no big deal. You don't have to wear gloves. Don't recommend it. I don't think it's a good idea. I guess I can put this card reader in because this is a 5.5-inch card reader. I like this one from NZXT. I just like the way it looks. And it looks like it's USB 3. And I don't know if this motherboard has 2 USB 3 ports on it or not. I might be in a little bit of trouble there. But we'll cross that bridge later. Nothing to worry about yet. These are mounting screws. That can go there. That can go there. And we need to get this cable unwrapped. As I mentioned in other videos, you want to take all the wire ties off. Just get rid of them. You don't want them inside of a working computer case. Over time, they will get dry and brittle and break, and you'll have a piece of metal floating around inside of your case that will most likely short something out over time and completely toast whatever it shorts out and whatever's plugged into that, potentially. I guess I'm going to put this, I could put it here or here. I think on the bottom is going to look best, so let's just take that out. And remember, if it goes into the front, if it sticks out from the front, it goes in from the front. So we're going to go in just like this, and then we'll push that straight forward, and ideally, it will lock into position. These clips that they've got on here are a little bit funky when it comes to installing card readers. It's all supposed to be a standard industry setting. There it is. And it actually did lock in. Yeah, I think that matches the front of the case pretty good, given it's a Corsair case and an NZXT card reader. And the card reader has an additional 2 USB 3 ports up front, so I'm guessing that's what this blue connector is for, and then the USB 2 connector will be for the actual card reader itself. If the motherboard only has one USB 3, then we have to decide which ports we want to hook up with USB 3, and then we can get either an adapter to convert one of these down to USB 2, assuming the motherboard has the spare USB 2 connector, or we can buy an add-on USB 3 PCIe card to solve that problem. So I'm just thinking about what I might be encountering here shortly. This customer has been very patient, waiting his turn in line to have his system built. Oh, did Lyle walk by? I was just looking in the chat. Where you at, doggo? Come here, Fluffer. There's a good boy. And there's the other one. All right. Well, no, it's not dinner time yet. No, not yet. I was just saying hello. Yeah. Mlep to you too. All right, so here we go. We can go ahead and take the wire tie off of here for the front port umbilicals. Let's go ahead and get that out of the way. There we go. These are good to save, if you want to, if you have extra cables left over, you want to wrap them up and put them in a drawer somewhere, cut those to fit. So I'll save that one. I want that one. And then I'm going to go ahead and just pull the front port umbilicals out away from the motherboard tray. Get that out and away so that this area is entirely open for us to be able to install the motherboard into. So for now, let's move that over here. And the PCIe wireless card. Let's see, what do we need? We need to prep the board. So we need CPU, the M.2, the RAM and the motherboard, the Windows, the video card, and the wireless card can go back here for now. Again, want to keep the work area as clean as we can so we don't damage anything, knock anything over. I don't need this right now, so that can get out of the way. Now, the x99 Sabertooth motherboard. This is a great motherboard. You'll see I always use Asus and Gigabyte boards, and the reason for that has to do with support. Well, you can get other motherboards from other manufacturers. When you're building computers and selling them for a living, it's important if there is a problem that the manufacturer backs you up, because customers don't care what motherboard you install. They only care that it works, and if there's a problem that you take care of it. So if you're responsible for it and they call you and then you find out the board's bad and you have difficulty getting a hold of ASRock or MSI or one of the numerous other motherboard manufacturers, you may have to buy your customer a new motherboard. And that happened to me with the other manufacturers that I don't use, and it almost cost me my business. And in fact, many of the customers who were affected by the bad boards that I ended up having to fix at my cost never ordered another computer from me again because of the inconvenience of how long they were down. So not only did it cost me money to fix the problem and my time, but then I lost the customer on top of it. So when companies that you buy from don't stand behind their products and make life easy, I can't recommend their products. I don't care if they're $10 cheaper. It's not worth it to me. I can't, my business reputation's on the line. All the customer knows is I bought this system from Carey. That's all they know. They don't know ASRock or MSI or Asus or Gigabyte or I don't know who else is left, BioStar. And some manufacturers recognize that, others don't. Another great example, I like MC Soft antivirus. And a customer of mine, I set him up with it. He paid, you know, I gave him the free 30-day trial. Told him if he likes it, he can go ahead and renew it. And when it came up for renewal, it somehow defaulted him to the internet security product instead of just the antivirus product. And then he started having computer problems where the machine was taking a long time to get past the desktop and boot up. And then it started saying it couldn't start a service. Anyway, I ended up taking the MCSoft Internet Security off and putting just the anti-malware product on. But then his license key wouldn't work as it wasn't for that product. And he had just paid for the license key. And he didn't know he bought the Internet Security product. By default, I guess it upgraded him. So anyway, he wrote them an email, and the next day they said, no problem, and because there's a price difference, we'll extend your license for the anti-malware product. Just click here, and enter this key, and you're good until this time. That's what you're looking for from a company. Every company makes mistakes or has problems. There's no way around that. What makes a good company, what differentiates a good company from a bad company is how they handle support calls. Are they easy to get a hold of? Do they handle your problem seriously? Do they expedite it? Do they try and shift the blame? Say it's something you did or oh, it's your power supply that did that. And that's basically what MSI did to me. And so I don't use their products anymore. And like I said before, I thought, even to this day, MSI has some of the coolest products on the market, but I'd never buy one, not knowing how they just left me with 3 customers with the same motherboards. None of the customers knew each other, and all the motherboards caught fire. And luckily, nobody's house or building or office burned down, or I would have been on the receiving end of a lawsuit for that. And MSI denied that there was any problem with their boards, and that was the last time I've ever used them. So, if you're building for yourself, then the only person you're inconveniencing is you. When you're building for other people, it's a reflection of you. If the part doesn't work and it takes long to get it fixed or to get a response from the company, as far as the customer knows, that's your fault. So, that's why I use the brands I use. And I've had no problems when I need help from Asus, which is very rarely. If I need help from EVGA, their support is based here in America. And that's great to be able to talk to somebody that I can thoroughly understand without a thick accent that can make a frustrating problem even more frustrating. And furthermore, that they stand behind their product. And that holds true, again, with Corsair. With the exception of their keyboards. I'll never buy another Corsair keyboard, but everything else from Corsair I like. Corsair doesn't stand behind their keyboards, so I can't recommend them for that. But everything else they do a good job with. So, I hope that answers your question on that. This board is pretty heavy. It's got the armor on it, what Asus calls the armor. And even on the back. And you can see we've got our 8 memory sockets, right? Usually you put half of your memory in one side and half of your memory in the other side. PCI Express slots. I'm sure we have an M.2 under here. Sometimes there's little bits of plastic that you can peel off. It looks like there's a piece of plastic here. I don't know. Sometimes if you don't peel the plastic off, it doesn't make a difference, and other times your customer may complain of a burning smell. And if there is a burning smell, it's probably best to just tell them ignore it. It'll go away in time. But if you take the plastic off now, something you don't necessarily have to be concerned about getting that phone call. So I guess I'm going to start with, well, gosh, I'm looking around and I realize we don't have a cooler. So I think the customer forgot to order a cooler, or I have to go back and look at my emails to the customer to see if I recommended a cooler or not. Again, this customer's been waiting quite a while, so it's possible that they forgot that part, or it's possible that I didn't put it on the list. So you know, the good news is I have that extra Kraken X62, and I bet you that will fit. I don't know. I can't tell. It's funny because remember I said I would use that, the X62 was just a little too big to fit in that Corsair 460X. So I had to go to the Kraken X52. And I realize if you're watching this, you probably just think I spoke another language right there. He said the X62 was too big to fit in the 460X and he had to go to an X52. Does that make sense to anybody? Yes, yes, believe it or not, there's people that are following along with that going, oh yeah, I totally understand. That's this world. Let's go ahead and get out this very expensive CPU. Again, this Core i7-6900K, and it's a pretty sizable chip. It's big. I mean, if you consider the size of a socket 2011, this is socket 2011 V3. That is pretty big. I don't know if you can tell, but maybe I have some change in my pocket and I can show you. So here's a quarter. Let me see if I can get a little closer to the camera. If it'll focus on me. So here's the chip, here's a quarter. So I'll give you an idea of just how much bigger this chip is than the socket 11, 50, 51, 775, 1366, whatever you may have. It's a pretty good size. If I put it in the palm of my hand, you can get a good idea of just how big that chip is. So it's nice when you pay a little more that you get a little more, right? Even if it's just in size. That could go there, and that can go there. More instructions. And the latches on this is a little difficult to film, but basically when you see the regular consumer builds that I do, they have one latch that lifts up. On the socket 2011 V3, you've got opposing latches that open from opposite sides. And so generally you push down and in. On the other ones you push down and away, but they only come out one way. So there's one side. Let's grab the other side. I always want to yank them towards the edges, and I gotta go towards the inside. So and then that can just open. Why isn't it coming up? Come on. Oh, I forgot. On this one, you actually push it down and then lift it with your hand. I thought that the whole thing went up, but apparently not. It's just a latch. It doesn't go beyond that point. That's okay. It's a very delicate socket underneath, so you want to make sure that you don't bend any of those pins. I've got a video that shows what happens if you do. And you can pretty much throw the motherboard away. That is not a warranty issue when you do that. So there's our chip right there. You notice the way I'm holding it by the edges. There's no electrostatic discharge to go anywhere when you hold it by the edges. It's got some notches in it. There's 2 notches here and 2 notches here. You can't really see it very well, but trust me, they're there. So that this can only be seated in one way. Generally speaking, the writing will always go, there's writing on the chip, and it will always go in the same direction as the writing on the board. So with the plastic in the way, it's kind of hard to tell, but if this is the top of the board and this is the bottom, right, because this is the back, this would be the top. When it's installed in the case, it's upright. And unfortunately, when I show you this way, this lid gets in the way, so I'm going to have to come in on an angle here. And it should go in, if I'm not mistaken, should go in just like this. Is it going to make me a liar? Does it go in the other way? Yeah, in this case, forget everything I just told you. Because in this case, the writing actually goes opposite. So there you go. I'm building too many consumer systems and not enough workstations to get all my facts straight. Technology keeps moving faster than I can keep up with it here, it seems like. So with that in position now, we can go ahead and bring this down and lock it into position. Again, I got to go on the inside. I still can't get used to that. And then this is going to lock down the back. And then this plastic lid can come off. You want to put that away. If you ever need to send the motherboard back for warranty reasons, you'll need to cover those pins up anytime you take the CPU out because they are so delicate. Again, manufacturers generally will not honor your warranty otherwise. Now, Asus has been doing a really good job at hiding the M.2s, and I thought this board had 2 M.2s, although we only need 1. Don't think there's one on the back. Sometimes there is. I'm pretty sure we've got one right here somewhere. So there is a screw we'll take out. There it is. Yeah, and so what we've got here is, it actually says in very small print right here, M.2 with an arrow. And the socket is facing me, you can't really see it. Then there's our mounting points to mount the M.2. And then there's the battery, the CR2032 battery. That's on all motherboards. I shouldn't say all motherboards. Some older boards have rechargeable batteries. I haven't seen that in a long time. And I do have 2 USB 3.0 ports, so that's no problem. That means we can have all the front USB 3s. Remember, it was a little anxiety I had early on, but I see 2 USB 3s here, so we're good there. And there's a screw right here for the M.2, which I'm going to take out, and it looks like the standoff is coming out with it. So let's see if we can do that and keep the standoff in place. The little standoff is put into position. Well, unless it's making a liar out of me. Is that supposed to come apart? Or is that all one piece? I thought it was supposed to come apart. Let's find out if it comes apart. It's a 5mm, just like the motherboard standoffs. So I've just put it in my socket set here and see if this will unscrew, and it does. I guess Asus is doing that because people lose the screws if they put it in a little bag. It's such a tiny little screw. So okay, so there's the screw. We're on a 2280 size, which is right here. So put that back, and we might as well just go ahead and tighten it down. You don't have to be real tight with this. It's just going to secure the M.2 drive in place. It's not got to be airtight or liquid tight. So you don't want to crush your motherboard or crack anything because you overdid it. Now we go to our M.2 NVMe Samsung 960 EVO 1 terabyte hard drive. And it comes with instructions. I like that there's no anti-static bag or anything. Just take the M.2 drive out. Get rid of that. It's going to go right into its socket just like so. You hear it click into position. Push it down. Get the screw ready. You definitely want to be using a magnetized screwdriver anytime you work inside of a computer. And anybody who says otherwise doesn't know what they're talking about. And the screwdriver is a little bit large for this. I know I have a smaller one, but that's why you use a magnetized screwdriver. And one of the worst things that can happen is the screw falls between the plastic plating and the motherboard, and it could scratch up the traces. You could forget it's there. You're like, oh, I'll get that later. And then you go to turn your system on, and it shorts out and smokes. So best to take care of that stuff as soon as possible, or better yet, avoid it from occurring by using the right tools. You know, you might think a surgeon isn't a very good surgeon if all he has to work with is a pair of pliers and an X-Acto knife. So the tools make the tech, and you could be a very competent tech, but without the proper tools, you may appear to not know what you're doing. So keep that in mind. People that are like, I'll just use the screwdriver I got laying around. I don't want to buy a new one. This screwdriver that I use, and I'll make sure I put a link to it, is I think $7. It's not a major investment. It's got a magnetized tip. It doesn't come with any bits, but you can buy bits all day long at the hardware store or on Amazon. You want to use a number 2 Phillips. That's the primary size screw. The one I just put in is like a number 1 for the M.2. But primarily, if you get yourself a number 2 and a number 1 Phillips bit, and that screwdriver is already magnetized, so the bit you plug in will be magnetized because of that. Makes your life so much easier, and you're much less likely to damage anything, and you don't have to work as hard. Okay, now memory. We've got 32 gigs of RAM, and we've got 4 sockets, and I'm trying to remember on Asus boards, because Asus is real funky about which slots they want us to use. I know it's the gray ones or the black ones, so here I'm going to go back to the motherboard manual and take a quick look for memory. Okay, memory. No. This has got to be further back. This is talking about PCIe. I don't want that. There we go. So this is what I'm looking for. There's a diagram here, and it shows me if we're going to use 4 memory modules. That writing is so small. I promise you that the writing font size on everything is getting smaller, and the older I get, the harder it becomes to read it. And I know part of that has to do with me getting older, but I also know that manufacturers are cramming much more information in the same size page to reduce page count, to reduce overall cost. All right, so these memory modules, it looks like they're going to go into the grays, which are A1, B1, D1, and C1. So according to this diagram, A1 is up here. Okay. So let's do that. You can see I'm not worried about the lack of a heatsink at this point. It really doesn't disrupt the build process at all. We can put the heatsink in as the very last thing if we want to, or we can certainly get the board installed and secured in position. I'm going to go ahead and open up all these tabs on the memory module sockets. And as I mentioned, we've got 4 of these memory modules. And customer didn't care if colors matched. Customer has no case window. It's not a priority to the customer. They wanted the best memory at the best price, which at that time was this memory. Sometimes people see parts and they don't quite understand how price plays into it. I've seen people question why K-version processors were used in chipsets where they couldn't be overclocked. But it never occurred to them that that K processor may have been on sale for the same price or less than the non-K version. And so it's very close-minded to think that a K processor must be overclocked. As I mentioned before, a K processor is already 10% faster than the non-K processor. So just buying that all by itself gives you a performance boost. So try and keep an open mind. There may be reasons you haven't considered that are logical, and you would have done the same thing if it was your money. Sometimes people ask why a certain power supply was used. Sometimes a bigger power supply is cheaper, again, when it's on sale. So why not buy it, right? If you can get an 850 watt power supply for the same price as a 750, what would you do? You know, so like in this example, we've got the RM750X. What if you could get the 850X for the same price or less? Wouldn't you? If I see that, I always advise my customers to go ahead and get that while it's on sale. There we go. Motherboard is prepped, like so. And then I don't know, do we have any stickers or anything in here? I don't think there is. Crucial makes the Ballistix. So we got Crucial RAM, Crucial case, Crucial power supply. No, I take that back. Corsair case, Corsair power supply, Crucial RAM. You know, for some reason, I get a brain fart when it comes to Corsair and Crucial. I don't know why, but I seem to confuse those two a lot. All right, now we can mount the motherboard. So I need the screws for that, which I have just off camera here in my stack of screws. Let's see, is it those? No, is it these? Yep, there they are. So let's see if we can get this motherboard put in position, and then I'll probably take a break. I'll have to check the memory card to clear it off. How long have we been going now? About 45 minutes. So yeah, I probably got about 15 minutes of memory card left. I almost threw that out. I still need that. Now, let's go ahead and bring the board, let's bring the case down here. And how many mounting holes do we have? 1, 2, 3 across the top. 1, 2, 3 across the middle. 1, 2, 3 across the bottom. And how many standoffs do I have? 1, 2, 3 across the top. 1, 2, 3 across the middle. 1, 2, 3 across the bottom. That's good. I don't need to change any standoffs. I don't need to take any out or add any. Everything's ready to go right out of the box. I always put the ports in first. The motherboard goes in on an angle. Always hold it by the edges. Always a good idea to be touching your case before you begin to prevent any electrostatic discharge. If you're paranoid about that, you can wear an anti-static strap. And one of the problems I'm going to have, and you're going to experience this personally if you have a shield over your I/O ports, which is a fashionable thing manufacturers have been starting to do. And this fan here gets in the way. So I'm going to go ahead and just pull that fan out. It just takes a minute to make my life easier. So let's go ahead and get that out of here. And we'll put it back. Oh, get back. Yeah. We got a runner. Okay, there's that. And there's that one. Yeah, you go there with your friend. Okay. One more time, let's bring this down. Make sure I/O shield is in all the way. Boy, this one corner just doesn't look like it's going in. There it is. Yeah, we're okay now. Now I should be able to bring this in. Again, ports go in first. Make sure to line up all of your ports with the holes in the I/O shield. That's your first priority. And then you're going to lift the back of the board up and push it forward, and it'll slide on one of the standoffs that has a peg on it. And that's going to hold the board in place. And while it's there, check and make sure all of these holes are lined up properly, that they're all not being blocked by anything. That looks pretty good from where I can see. You guys can probably see it better than I can at this point. And let's bring our torque setting back down to 3 on this. There it is. Once again, I'm going to recommend you guys don't use an electric screwdriver, especially with your motherboard. You should be turning it by hand. Unless, as I mentioned, you are very familiar with how your electric screwdriver reacts to cross-threaded screws. And I'm having a little bit of an alignment issue here, it seems. Oh, I see what it is. So in this case, I've got to push the board. Usually you have to push the board back. This one I had to, it was kind of sitting cattywampus. There we go. And you don't want to tighten these screws all the way down because you still may need to wiggle the board back and forth to get the other mounting holes to align. And you can hear the screwdriver is shutting off. It's hitting its torque. And I'm not I'm not leaving them loose because I feel overconfident. And it just bit me in the butt. So all I gotta do is just loosen these ones I put in. Just a couple of turns so I can wiggle that board around a little bit. There it is. So that's the 3 along the back side. Now let's do the middle. And we don't do the very center one because, again, that has the post sticking through it. And then we just have 3 more. You know, one up here in this corner. One here in the middle, which is kind of hard to see, even for me. So you guys don't feel bad that you can't really see it, because I can barely see it. And then the last one's going to go here. And then let's make sure everything is now tightened down properly. I know I've already did that. I'll do it one more time. Good. That leaves us with 2 screws left over. Perfect. There's a total of 10 standoffs. There's 9 that are already installed in the Corsair 300R, and they give you an extra one. So why do I have 2 left over? Because remember, the center one is a post, and it doesn't take a screw. So, not sure why Corsair gives you that extra one. I can't explain it. Everything looks good there. I think it looks pretty good. Now let's bring this back up. Get this back up on the Lazy Susan. A lot of people have been asking questions about the Lazy Susan. I've had links in other videos. If you look at the one where the judge orders the computer build, I believe there's a link in there from Amazon where you can order this very same turntable or Lazy Susan. Now with the motherboard installed, I can put this fan back in. Remember, the airflow goes in the direction where the support brackets are. So you see these support brackets? There's a center here that doesn't turn, right here. This side, you can see the middle turns. There's no support brackets. See the support brackets here? So the air is moving in the direction of the support brackets. We want all the air to come in from the front and go out to the back. So the way we orient the fan, I like to have the Corsair logo facing up. And then we can just hold that like so. I think I'm going to have to grab my manual screwdriver on this. These screws are a little bit tough to turn. If you have an extra set of hands, that's always helpful. Once again, magnetized screwdriver is going to be your best friend whenever you build a computer or work on anything electronic. What you don't want to use a magnetized screwdriver around is anything that's magnetic, you know, like floppy disks. That's why we didn't use magnetic screwdrivers back in the day, and some people still follow that old advice, and just goes to show you they didn't understand why they were following the advice. And that's why I like to go into detail about explaining why I'm doing the things I'm doing, because if your computer's slightly different or you run into a scenario that I don't demonstrate, I want you to be able to think on your own and understand the logic behind why I do what I do, so you're not just a robot following blindly, but rather you're using your human judgment and understanding the logic behind why things are being done the way they're done, so that when you encounter a situation that isn't covered in my video, you understand the logic and the reasoning of how to proceed without having to be told. All right, now I've got another screw on the floor somewhere. I have to find that. Oh, here it is. Usually the best way to find a lost screw is to walk around barefoot. You're sure to step on it every single time. It hurts, but you'll find it. All right. Now we can secure that back down. Man, it's hot in here. It's 100 and something degrees outside today. It's just too darn hot. Too darn hot. Decided I need to move back to Michigan and make my studio the basement. The basement's going to be nice and cool. It'll be quiet. There won't be any interruptions. There we go. All right. That looks pretty good. So we're about an hour in, well, not even an hour, 50 minutes in to the build process, and we got almost everything done. What remains, of course, we have the graphics card and the Wi-Fi card, and of course we still have all the cabling to do, power cables, LEDs and switches, USB cables, which is all pretty simple. And I think what I'm going to do here is we're going to take a short intermission. Oh, I just looked up the wish list recommended parts that I sent the customer, and I did recommend a Kraken X52, and he failed to order it. So I will have to kick an email off to him. And I think the X62, I'm just kind of looking at where the mounting holes are up here. And I don't think that X62 is going to fit. I'm not even sure the X52 is going to fit looking at this, because the space between the heatsink here on the motherboard and the top is very, very narrow. But there are some mounting holes closer into the top that could potentially, no, it's not going to take it further. It's not going to work. I'm almost thinking his customer may be better off with some Noctua air cooler versus the liquid cooling options with the 300R case here. Alternately, we could pull the hard drive cage out and mount the radiator in the front, I think. Can we? We might be able to, but then where would the hard drive cage go? There'd be no other place for it to go. So for as big of a case as this is, sure doesn't leave much room for a liquid cooler. That's a little disappointing. I mean, obviously we could get a 140 millimeter radiator, stick it right here, but that would be blasphemy on an X99 chipset. Yeah, I'm starting to wonder if that X52 is even going to fit in here at all. That is going to be a tight fit. And the other thing is it's going to block these ports. You'll see the power connectors. There's a 4-pin and an 8-pin right up here on the top. And once you put that cooler in, you will not be able to reach that. So it means you have to build in a specific order, or you'll be disassembling things. Let's throw it out to the chat. You guys have any suggestions for cooling? Let's throw it in the chat. I know there's a little bit of a delay here, so things may seem a little quiet here as I'm waiting for you guys to catch up with the feed. Someone's agreeing best to go with air cooling. Everybody thinks air cooler, huh? Nobody's got a liquid cooler solution? I think an air cooler is going to look a lot better. I don't know if it's going to perform any better. Honestly, the RAM is not high profile. I don't think we're going to have any problems with an air cooler hitting the RAM. My dogs want a cookie. You guys want cookies? They just had their dinner. Now they want dessert. All right, let's give you some cookies. All right, come here. All right, let's see if you can see him. All right, Jimmy. Come over here. No, that's rude. Give me paw. No. Sit. Give me paw. Good boy. There's your cookie. What about you, mister? What about you, Mr. Lyle? Mr. Fluffer? You big old hairy monster? Give me that paw. Give me the other one. No, give me this one again. No, give me that one. Good boy. There he goes. All right. Making him work for his food. Let's see. What are we going on in the chat? Auto power up? No, my camera was on pause when I came back from the intermission. I forgot to start the camera, but that's okay. We're live anyway, so I don't really need the original video. Push the hard drive tray near the power supply. You can't. There's no place for it to go. The hard drive tray... Oh, wait a minute. Let me make sure I'm not a liar. You know what? That hard drive tray is riveted. That's a rivet that's holding this hard drive. So that won't even come out. Not even an option to remove it. That is a rivet right here. So the hard drive cage cannot move. And it appears to be rivets. No, that's a screw on the bottom. But it's a rivet on the top. So Just want to get a flashlight in there and take a look. It's pretty dark. Well, that didn't help. Yeah. Yeah, that's a rivet. Rivet, rivet. That ain't happening. Hard drive cage will not move. One of the advantages you have when you work for a company that builds computers is you're always building with the same parts. So it's very easy to be familiar with doing things pretty much blindfolded because everything's always the same. When you're building custom computers for customers, as I do, not only are the parts constantly changing because they're being upgraded and there's different revisions that the manufacturers do, but then of course there's a variety of parts, and there may be well, not maybe, in almost every case, the computers I build are unique. And it's very rare that you see me build two computers that are exactly identical. And because of that, you will see me stumble around a little bit when a manufacturer does something different, or I'm building something like with the RGB lighting. I don't normally do that kind of work. It's a lot of additional work. It's worth it when it's done, but man, it's hooking up that RGB lighting to me is harder than building the computer. The x99 stuff, you don't see me build many of these, maybe 3 or 4 videos on x99 versus 30 or 40 regular consumer-based, Intel chips. So sometimes you do see me struggle a little bit because the best way we learn things is through doing them over and over and over through repetition. And of course, when the parts keep changing and the designs are changing and the cabling is changing, each build becomes a unique experience. And over time, you start to learn sort of certain patterns that manufacturers generally follow. And then right when you get that figured out, some manufacturer will change it, give you a mounting hole somewhere where there's no standoff, or the case manufacturer will give you a standoff where there's no mounting hole. You guys just running in and out like crazy. You got fed and now you're all happy, huh? Good boys. Good boys. Did something break? No, that's the dogs running in and out. The sound of the doggy door. Okay, well, I guess I can get started doing. We can hook motherboard power up right now, so why don't we do that? Let's get this out of the way. We'll put it down here for now. Let me get the keyboard and mouse out of the way. Just a visual distraction. Shouldn't need the screwdriver. I'll put that away. And let's see what we got for cables. There's our motherboard cable. And there's one power cable. This looks like video. So, looking at the board, I've got that 4-pin and the 8-pin. I don't think we need to use both of them, but if we do, what if we do? The motherboard may have come with an adapter. Maybe. Maybe. We got our SATA cables, Q connector, SLI bridge, triple SLI bridge, driver disc, stickers. Here's your certificate of reliability. Yeah, that's a pretty reliable certificate. Warranty notice. 5-year warranty on the board, which is a really great warranty. What's in here? Oh, so we've got a little fan. I guess if you want to 3D print sensor or something. We've got, these are the armor covers, so any sockets we're not using, we can cover those sockets up and keep the motherboard completely cool looking and keep the dust out. I don't know, dust is really a problem in these PCI Express sockets, but that's just a bag of plastic covers to go over any slots you're not using. I don't need that. And these are just plugs for ports in the back you're not using, like looks like USB, HDMI. You can, if you want to cover up any of these ports on the back. These are little thermal sensors where if you want to monitor the temps of specific areas within your case. I think the motherboard supports up to 12 temperature zones, which is ridiculous. Basically, if you can imagine 12 separate temperature zones in this case, it's so much overlap. 3 or 2 should be more than enough. You generally put these where you're going to be worried about heat, so maybe by your M.2, your graphics card, your GPU, and your CPU. That's pretty much the only 3 places I can think of. I don't know why people are obsessed with that. And again, the cooling fan, which I'm pretty sure is an option that I think you have to do Asus has been getting with sort of the maker crowd and doing 3D printing for designing. Either you can design your own or you can download from the forums the file, I forget what the extension is, to print out a pre-planned 3D printed cover to put the fan on. And at least I remember that conversation with JJ. I'm assuming that's what this is. I haven't really had time to, sit down and read the manual. When would I ever do that? So here's what I'm going to do. For right now, I'm pretty sure you only have to hook up one power connector. Pretty sure. I think the other one is if you're doing some extreme overclocking. And you guys can feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. I think that secondary CPU power is for extreme power draws when you're doing extreme overclocking. Pretty sure. Doesn't hurt, if you've got it plugged in, it ain't gonna hurt you. But I don't think you have to have it either. But if you do, there's no adapter. Sometimes they include little power adapters for stuff like that. There is not one here. And these cables we aren't going to use just yet, so they'll all go back in the box so I don't misplace them or they don't get... Basically just keep them all in one place, right? And what better place than the bag? Not the velvet bag, but the Velcro bag. And I'm just going to really quickly, I want to just view at this, take a quick look at this owner's manual here. This is what you guys get to look forward to when you get older. Let's see. I'm sure it's going to tell me about that fan somewhere in here. And I want to know about that power connector. ATX power connector. Yeah, so the picture here, you guys may not be able to see it very well. Maybe I can bring it up there. Basically says you can do one of 3 things, and that is that you can use, is it going to focus? You can use the power connector here, this way, or this way. Any of those 3 configurations should work, but not all 3. You pick one of the 3. So it does appear to be one or the other, not both. So it'll support either a single 8-pin or the, a single 4-pin or the single 8-pin. And the single 4-pin can go on the single 8-pin or into its own connector. So that's not confusing at all. And I still want to know about that little fan. Which is probably right up on the front when it said what the stuff, what it came with here. Usually in the front it'll tell you these are the items you should have. Yeah, package contents. So it's calling it a 1x40 millimeter assistant fan. And when do you use that fan? Motherboard is ERP ready. That's European Union's energy-related products. So here in the States, you know, that really matters to us. System memory. There's a bunch of memory compatibility here. If you want to make sure that the memory you buy isn't going to have any problems. That doesn't, if the memory is not on the list, it doesn't mean it's not going to work. It just means they haven't tested it. So it might work and it might not work when you buy off the list. And the list that you can download online is more updated than what's printed in the manual. In fact, some of the memory they tested probably isn't available. I can say this, probably isn't available for sale anymore. System connector, TPM connector, chassis intrusion, serial port, CPU installation, power, BIOS update utility. Ooh, I might have to do that too, but not until I get a cooler on this thing. I'm not going to play around with a $1,000 CPU to make sure it auto throttles like it's supposed to. We'll put a cooler on that before we do that. Updating the BIOS, DVD menu. This is all software, BIOS. More software, audio configuration, RAID configuration. I don't see anything else about that fan. I mean, it's got to be in here somewhere. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that that's an optional fan. You don't have to use it. It's for people who overclock, and they're obviously going to be adding a little bit of noise when you add that fan, and you would be somebody who's going to create your own, you know, fan mount using a 3D printer. I'm sure this is riveting to watch me look at this, but it's really bugging me that I can't easily find that reference to that little fan. It's talking about everything else: USB 3, onboard LEDs, CPU over voltage, jumpers, expansion slots, memory configurations and compatibilities, qualified vendor list, system, da-da-da-da-da. Well, it's probably because I'm looking for it, right? Oh, these little plastic covers. They're calling them ESD guards. Sure. Yeah, that's where you have problems. Thermal radar, SATA Express support. Supports NVIDIA 3-way quad GPU SLI technology with 2 PCI Express 16 graphics cards, and supports AMD 3-way quad GPU Crossfire X technology. Supports 28-lane or 40-lane CPUs. Nothing more about that fan. Well, anyway, I'm not going to sweat about it. I'm not losing any sleep over it. My main concern was the power. What have I missed? Anything in the chat? Anybody have... Anybody know about that little fan? If you know about that little fan, put it in the chat. Because I don't know. I'm pretty sure, but I'm not positive. Pretty sure we don't need it. We're not going to use it. And when you're live, you got to keep the show moving. And I am running out of daylight here, running out of light. So let's go ahead and get the motherboard power hooked up right now. Let me step around. See what we got going on here. I'm going to go to the back of the power supply. These go here. One there. Wow, it didn't click. But it's in. And it's locked. Come on now. There we go. And then we're going to bring that out through, let's bring it out through here. I kind of like that there's no rubber grommets. Those things, in a way, they make the cables look a little better, and in a way they make them look worse as they kind of bend around the cables, and then they get pushed out and such as you're trying to work with them. So good riddance. Glad they're not there. Because when they are in there, I do feel obligated to use them when I could just take them out. The customer probably wouldn't even know they were gone. But I tend to keep everything the way the manufacturer intended, just so I don't have any problems as a result that I never thought of until after oh, there was a reason they're there, not just looks. You never know, it happens. All right, let's see if we get that on there. There we go. That is a very stiff motherboard cable, motherboard power cable. Okay, there's that. The end of the cable here that says type 4, that's going to go under the back of the power supply. And it'll go right up here in the top corner where it says PCIe 6+2 PCIe-E and 4+4 CPU. This is a 4+4 CPU. And it can plug into any of the 3 connectors here on the top. And I'm going to keep it as close to the edge of the motherboard, as close to the motherboard as I can, because we want our cabling to look nice and clean. So we're going to push that out through there, take that out, and we're going to go right up into this corner like so. And the clip is going to go on this motherboard towards the outside edge. I hate it when they design motherboards any other way. The clip should always go towards the outside, because if you ever have to unclip it, you need to be able to get your finger on it. So if that clip were facing any other direction, it would be extraordinarily difficult to try and unclip it, like between the heatsink and the connector there. So that hooks up power to the motherboard. That wasn't very difficult. This is our USB 3 connector. We can run this out. Let's see, let's get this out of the way because we can. So we'll run that out through there, and we'll take the USB 2 with us. Run that out as well. This is for the memory card reader. And then we can bring those both down right into the same spot, right down here. Bring them in there. And spin it back around and pull them through. There's one. There's the other. That one can plug in right here. Right? That's not rocket science. And the USB is right next to it. That's convenient. That can go right there. Look at that. Bada boom, bada bing. Multi-pass. Big bada boom. All right, so what do we got? We got another USB. This USB is for these 2 USBs here. The one we just hooked up was for these 2. So this is what we just hooked up. This was the USB 2, and this was the USB 3, these 2 blue ones. Now we got another USB 3 up front. Lots of USB 3 on this. I like that. Customer's going to like it. This one is going to come in. We could go into the top. Yeah, let's take it in off the top, right through here. Just looking at what's going to look the best, but I want to arrange the cables in a way that I'm not interweaving them, because that'll make my cable management later a nightmare. And then that's going to go on just like so. And we can take this extra cable, pull it back through so that it'll look nice and pretty up front. And we'll clean this up later. You want to be careful when you're pulling that through. There's a lot of tension on this connector. And what you want to be careful of is if you're just blindly pulling this cable from this side, you could actually break that connector by pulling it too hard. So use common sense. Remember, I mean, you're feeling these parts with your hand. You can feel the way they're built. You can feel how sturdy they are. It drives me nuts when the people that build these computers don't straighten the cables out. I'm not sure if it's their fault or my fault on this one. Did I twist it? Sometimes, well, it's always easier to blame somebody else, right? There we go. I guess it's okay. I just had it twisted. That was my bad. So you can see how clean the cabling is already looking on the inside of this case. And let's go ahead and hook up the front umbilicals while we're here. Why not? These are all of our switches and LEDs. We should have 4 of them. There's number 4. And then, of course, we have our front port audio. Front port audio is always easy to take care of. We can run... So that front port audio cable's got to go all the way down to this corner. So the question is, do we have enough cable to bring it down? Or do we bring it around this way? I typically bring it around through here because I don't usually have long enough cable to bring it up and then still be able to go down afterwards. So again, trying to keep the cabling looking clean. I'll tell you what I can do. Since I have to basically be up in this corner, I can run this behind these cables, right? So it's kind of out of the way. No, I don't like that one bit. Let's do it this way. We'll run it behind. See what I did there? And then I'll bring it up right through here. Then we'll come back around. We'll grab that, pull it through. Ooh, is that all I got? It only goes on one way, and it looks like it's just enough cable. I mean, just enough. Look at that. I mean, there's not an inch of slack left over. That is tight. Look at that. If I had one complaint or one suggestion for improvement, it would be that case manufacturers make this cable about 8 inches longer, which is a significant amount of space, so that you can route that cable up through this hole here in the corner, pull it through and run it down the length of the board, right down into that connector. It would make a much cleaner look on the wiring, because there's really not much you can do to hide this cable right here, you know, apart from building a little cover or something. Okay, finally, we've got the power switch, LEDs. That's going to go in, let's see, where do we want to bring that in? Yeah, that's going to go in right through here. This is a good time to make sure nothing's tangled up. You know, if this, for example, was wound up into here, and then you went to cable tie it later, you'd be like, oh, nuts. And you'd have to unplug things and pull them through. So just think a few steps ahead. If you're not sure how to think ahead, learn how to play chess. It's a valuable life skill to know how to play chess. Let's see, let's start with the hard drive LED. And here we go. We're back to this really tiny writing and very dark area. I can't see it. And the connector is too big. Usually the connector is much smaller than that on other case manufacturers, so it's pretty obvious. On this board, not so much. So let's take a look at what we got here. Okay, so it wants this is a very different configuration. It wants reset on the end, which is weird. Usually reset goes beside the I'm going to get this right. Usually the pins are in this corner, and there's four on the bottom, 4 on the top. That usually, on all the builds you see me do, it'll be hard drive LED, reset switch, power LED, power switch. On this board, reset switch goes on the end. Then the power switch, that's not a power switch. Power switch goes next to that, right here. There's 4 pins above that you can hook an external speaker to. Nobody really does that anymore. Then you've got the hard drive LED, which is in this, that's the only thing that's in the same place. So the hard drive LED with the positive cable facing facing towards my left, well, your left too. It's going to go on those bottom 2 pins, as it would on just about every motherboard, every modern motherboard made within the last few years. And then above that, there's a pin separated by a pin, and that's your power connector, which is why the case manufacturers split this. I've described this in videos before, where you always see me putting these 2 together. And I explain the reason they do that is some motherboards require that the power LED be a 3-pin connector. And so that's what this is. That's a 3-pin connector with 2 pins. So we're just hooking up the 2 pins we need. They sort of have to do it that way because if this came out of the case with 3 pins, it wouldn't work on a 2-pin power header on a motherboard. And if it were 2 pins that were together, I wouldn't be able to connect it to the 3-pin. Although usually there's a spot to hook up another power connector that's a 2-pin if your case doesn't support it, which may be that one right there. But I'm not going to worry about it because it's not a problem. That effectively... No, we're not done yet. Too premature. I got to hook up data cables now for the optical drive and the mechanical drive, so why don't I do that? So we'll go back to the motherboard box, which I have over here. And we want a set of cables. This motherboard comes with 6 cables. Each bag contains 2. 1 cable per drive, whether it's a hard drive or a optical drive, doesn't matter. 1 cable per drive. And the M.2, of course, doesn't require any cabling at all. And it's much, much faster and much more reliable. So, something to keep in mind. You'll notice one of these cables has a right angle on it here. That's the one I always plug into the back of the DVD drive. So, why don't we do that now? So that's going to go on right there, like so. And we can run this out through here. Once again, think about not interweaving these cables because you are going to have to undo that at some point. And then we plug into one of these sets of cables here, connect cables. One of these sets of SATA connectors. I'm not sure which. I got to go back to the motherboard manual. And ideally, this is the optical drive, so it'll be plugged into the second one. Let's see, SATA. Here we go. So this is what I'm looking at here. SATA 1 and 2 are the white connector right here. These are both 6G. Actually, they're all 6G. Okay, so that's going to go on the bottom. You always want to plug the bottom one in first because otherwise you won't be able to get to it if you plug the top one in first. And then while we're there, we can go ahead and plug that one in, like so, and run it out of there. Pull in the slack on everything, untwist it, make sure it's not interwoven. Bring it around, plug it in, boom, done. Now we have to give them power. So we need power to the optical drive, power to the hard drive. This doesn't require any power at all. It's being powered through USB. I think that'll wrap up the cabling. I'm just thinking, where's this fan going to plug in? There's usually a fan header right in the corner. So they've got a bunch of fan headers. 1, 2, 3 down here. Two more there. 3 more up here. We got a lot of fan headers here, but unfortunately they're making us run the cables. Let me go ahead and hook this fan up since I'm thinking about it. I don't like that. Well, you know what? For right now, I don't think it matters. I'm thinking those two are just right up against each other. I mean, there's not even room for that cable to go down between. That's how tight that is. Look at that. That seems to be the theme for this build. So for now, I'm just going to plug it in. I'll worry about cabling it, making it look pretty later, rather. Chassis fan 3, chassis fan 2, and chassis fan 4. All right, well, I'll use the one that's nearest to me. Once again, very, very dark. Cannot see in there. There we go. Yeah. What I'll probably do before I put the video card in is I'll probably have to take this fan out again, run the cable down through there. In fact, you know what? Why don't I just do it now and be done with it? I got to do it at some point. I may not need to take the fan completely out. Maybe just these two screws on the side, maybe all I need to do, just to get enough room to get that cable back there. There it is. Good. Looks good, looks good. So finally, I need to get power, like I said, to the optical drive and the hard drive. So let me grab, here's a regular, I don't think a single connector is gonna fit. I don't think it's gonna reach. Might need to use two, which is a bummer because one more cable is one more cable to manage it. It just doesn't look as good, right? But yeah, you can see the length of the cable. It's not gonna make it. So it's going to have to be one cable per drive, unfortunately. I don't think I have any way around that. And on the back of this power supply here, we've got these 6-pin connectors, and there's 4 of them, 2 on the bottom, 2 on the top. Doesn't matter which ones you use. I like to keep them all together as close to the back of the case as possible for the cleanest cable management when they're all done with the project. And preferably keep all the power cables connected, or power cables together through the case so that when you're doing your cable management later, they can all be bundled together with a zip tie in one fell swoop. See, it starts to get a little bit tight in there. Once again, running theme. And then we can bring this up. I suppose it really doesn't matter. I mean, it sure would be nice if that would reach, but it isn't going to happen. So get this around here, let's get that there. We're gonna have to go in like this. We'll hook up our power connector here to the back of the optical drive. Then we've got power there now. And we'll just have to wire tie all of this extra, you know, to get folded up like so. I'll use a nylon zip tie, and you know, when we do our cable management, we'll clean that up. This we don't need, none of that we need. I can all go back for now. And now we can hook up power to the hard drive. Same thing, same cable. Why does this cable look longer? I'm sure they're identical. It's too bad that one of these connectors wasn't further down. They're all pretty much equally spaced, which is great when you're going to hook up, you know, a bunch of drives that are close. You can see when that cable's folded, you can get 3 drives in a row, boom, boom, boom. But when they're separated by a foot, like these are, those connectors are just too darn close together. The hard drive can be mounted up in here, but it does make working on it a bit more difficult. Plus we have what? 1 fan or 10 fans in the front. We only have 1 fan in the front, so we still have that fan to hook up. And then you have to decide when you hook up your hard drive power, do you want to use the middle cable, the end cable, or the very first, well, or last cable connector. They all work the same. You got to think about what's going to look the best on my build. I think stuff like this, you keep the length of the cable, you know, just hook up the ends, and then you just fold up the part you're not using, fold up the slack and wire tie it and make it look as good as you can. And let's see, how are we going to do this? That's the USB cable for the card reader. So let's go in right there. Pull that through. And you know what? I'm gonna just keep it on the bottom. Just fill that whole bottom right up. Does that look? It kind of looks like I've got it. See, I've got it crossed over this other cable. I don't want to do that. Once again, it's going to be a cable management issue later on. So take care of that now. Okay, so now the optical drive has power, data, hard drive has power, data, motherboard has power, CPU has power, RAM is installed, CPU is installed, motherboard is installed, power supply is installed, hard drive LED, power LED, reset switch, and power switch are all hooked up. Front USB 2.0 is hooked up. Front USB 3.0 is hooked up. The other front USB 3.0 was hooked up. Front port audio was hooked up. Got it all done. We're running at 1 hour and 46 minutes, minus that 10-minute intermission. Right now, I would power the machine on using this onboard. Wait, this doesn't have onboard video. I have to install the video card, but I don't want to install it just yet because it may make installing the cooler a little more difficult. Nothing else I've installed should interfere with the installation of whatever cooler this customer decides to go with. So when the customer orders the cooler and I receive it, I can continue the build at that point, put the cooler in, then go ahead and put in the graphics card and the Wi-Fi card, update the BIOS, and start to install Windows 10. That's pretty much it. And then the cable management gets done. On that, you're looking at a $2,800 computer, something like that, $2,800, $3,000. Built in under 2 hours and built well. Everything fits like it's supposed to. The only issue, again, is the missing cooler, which may have been a blessing in disguise. If the customer had ordered the X52, I don't think it would be fitting, so maybe a very good thing that the customer failed to order that, because we might just be sending it back. I already have an X62 laying around. I don't need a spare X52 laying around. I don't want to become Newegg. I don't want to have a bunch of spare parts laying around. And, you know, I don't work with the 300R very often. I think this is the second time I've worked on a 300R. And I thought it was bigger than this. I honestly thought it gave me a lot more space for a radiator. I thought that was the whole point of it. But given the difference between this and the 200R, it just seems like this is about this much taller. Other than that, it looks exactly like the 200R. Depth-wise, width-wise. The only thing is it's just a little taller. So I guess that's going to wrap up the live build for now. I'll have links to all the parts in the show notes when this video is processed by the time you're watching it. This is obviously a note for the people who are watching it live. And once the cooling solution comes in, I'll pick the build back up at that point and we'll complete it. I'm so anxious to want to turn it on right now and check my work, but nothing I can do until I have that cooler. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the build process, and I will see you next time. Until then, bye for now.